So Samsung has come out with a direct successor to the S8 Plus, the S9 Plus, and the G7 is just being released now. So how do the older versions of these phones compare? Hey guys, my name is Ryan Thomas for Failtech, and this is the S8 Plus versus the LG G6 in 2018 and beyond. Let's first talk about build, design, and the fingerprint scanners and their locations. So to start with the fingerprint scanners, they're both in very similar locations. The Galaxy S8 Plus has it on the back as well as the G6. However, the G6 is actually a button as well, so there's no lock button, it's part of the fingerprint scanner. The S8 Plus has its fingerprint scanner next to the camera, which can kind of be confused with the flash and the heart rate monitor. Unfortunately, this is a problem that a lot of people had. I personally didn't really have a problem with this, but then I never really used it as a daily driver. The G6, in my opinion, does this better, and especially as the lock button is part of the fingerprint scanner. The build materials are very similar, so you've got metal around the outsides and glass on both front and back, and as long as you get the US version of the LG G6, you get wireless charging on both, which is awesome, because the S8 Plus does have it. The more elegant, rounded, and overall clean design of the Galaxy S8 Plus is one that I personally, and weirdly, don't like. I prefer the G6, and that's due to the fact that it doesn't have curved edges. I feel it's more ergonomic, it's a lot easier to grip the phone without kind of accidentally touching the screen, and the glare that comes from the reflections with the curved edges when you're watching videos is something I just can't get over, and I much prefer the G6. So it's kind of a subjective thing, and weirdly enough, I prefer the one that's kind of more blocky and less elegant. Both phones keep microSD and the IP68 water and dust resistance, which is awesome having those two together, and both have really good headphone jacks as well. You will have to be very careful with both because they both have glass backs, which is annoying but also really cool because of course it enables the wireless charging and it makes it look more elegant, but they are more subject to scratches and more importantly cracks. So I recommend going and getting a skin or a case, which kind of detracts from the elegant nature, which makes the G6 just a little bit more relevant. The displays are both very good, but they're very different displays. Now, I could go on about the G6's amazing IPS display, but we all know that Samsung does the best displays in the entire market. The 6.2-inch OLED here is absolutely stunning. It's a wide version of QHD, and it works really well. It's slightly off in terms of its aspect ratio. It's 18.5:9 as opposed to 18:9 with the LG G6, but the colors are amazing. The blacks are perfectly deep. It's incredibly sharp. Everything about the display is just absolutely stunning. I've said this in multiple reviews of the S8 and the S8 Plus, and even other Samsung reviews. I really like the display in this. The G6's is really good, don't get me wrong. The IPS display in that is fantastic. It's bright. It's not quite as bright, obviously, but it is fairly bright, and it gets nice and vibrant, and you can tune the display to how you like it, and it's very sharp, but you just can't win with displays compared to Samsung. For performance, the Exynos 8895 is a newer chip than the Snapdragon 821 that's found in the G6. Now this is obviously going to have its implications. It's more power hungry, but also more power efficient. It's a lot more powerful, and overall works better within the OS because it's designed for that. Similarly with the RAM, you have 4 gigs in each of these phones, which I think is a good sweet spot, and I have said that multiple times in videos, but it's not quite 6 or 8, which in the past I would have said, you know, what's the point? But now, as we're going into the future, and I try and emphasize the longevity of these things, 6 and 8 gigabytes of RAM really does push that, so it lasts you a few more years, because modern operating systems just use so much RAM with background tasks. So look out for AI in modern smartphone videos and modern smartphone marketing, because most of it is just adding background tasks. The G6 has Nougat, and the S8 Plus has Oreo, so that's obviously a big step ahead for the Samsung. However, they're both not the newest version, so you've got 8.0 Oreo on the S8 Plus versus the old version of Nougat on the G6. Both are very heavily skinned versions. They're slightly different in how they go about this, but they are both heavily skinned, and both manufacturers are really bad at releasing software updates, so that's something to point out. Also, I feel like they're not as common as, say, Essential or OnePlus when it comes to third-party. Nexus and Pixel have the same thing. They're really good with third-party software. You will get third-party software for both of these devices, but it's just not quite as common, and I feel it's not quite as well done as those other devices. When it comes to future updates and in the future, the G6 might get an Oreo update. It has got planned 8.1 Oreo, and I believe the S8 will go to the next 1 or 2 operating systems, but that's about it because Samsung seems to cut everyone off after a couple of years. So in the software department, I have to give it to the S8, but it's hardly that much better than the G6. The dual 13 megapixel cameras on the G6 are really cool. They're not that good in actuality, but when it comes to looking at them on paper and also in their modularity, they're really cool because of course you can seamlessly switch between the standard focal range and the super wide focal range, and both are as sharp as each other, but I feel like the software kind of lags behind here. It's very dated. The back end of the software isn't very good at replicating the HDR that you might get in a Pixel or Samsung photo, and the images look a bit washed out and not quite, I'd say clean enough is kind of the word, because yes, they can be grainy and yes, they can be soft, but clean is the word that I'm looking for, because the S8 just does it so well. Sometimes they can be a little bit over sharpened, but you've only got a single camera there, so it kind of makes up for it, and you do get optical image stabilization on that camera. I just like the way that the S8 produces really clean photos most of the time. But that's not even the biggest difference. The biggest difference is that the S8 Plus has a really good piece of software used to take those photos. You can change your own manual settings, you can download different modes off the Samsung App Store, you can do plenty of different things, and it just gives you a lot of options. You don't have dual cameras on the S8 Plus, and you will miss out on that live focus feature which you can get on the S9 Plus and any Samsung device that has dual cameras. However, you will be paying significantly less than those other options. The photos and videos that come out of the S8 Plus are leaps and bounds better. However, the G6 isn't bad if you're in really good lighting conditions and you're just a good photographer, because you can have the best camera in the world, but if you're not a good photographer, you're not going to produce good photos. I've seen pros take really good photos on the original iPhone, and they probably take better photos than me, and I have a GH4, so it's not the best in the world, but I have a lot more equipment. I'm just not quite as good as a photographer like that. This is something that really annoys me, and I'm actually planning on making a video in the next couple of weeks that really focuses on this. But a 3300 mAh battery in the LG G6 is plain not big enough. For a phone with a 5.7 to 5.8 inch display, depending on who you talk to, it's just really not big enough. And then with the S8 Plus, a huge 6.2 inch display, 3500 mAh battery. It's just ridiculous. And I will go into why this is a thing and why I think it should be combated in the future, but both are going to give you kind of more mediocre battery life than you would expect for a phone that's got a big display, because you expect a big battery. Yes, okay, these new system on chips are quite power efficient, but as I stated earlier in the performance section, they are very power hungry as well. You do get fast charging on both models, which is really cool, and you do get wireless charging on both as long as you get the G6 in the US. These are both really good options if you're one of those people who sits at a desk maybe halfway through the day and can charge your phone up. It's a lot easier to do that than to carry around a battery bank all the time. But I personally would rather not have to charge my phone up during the day. It's just something that I'm kind of into. Also, one thing to note, which is part of the user experience and not necessarily something you'll see in reviews or on the box, is that I recommend that you lower the resolution on the S8 Plus from wide QHD to wide full HD. And now this might sound absolutely counterintuitive, but the battery life on wide QHD is absolutely abysmal, especially in my testing. So there isn't a clear winner here, because you're going to get much better ergonomics in my opinion with the G6, but you're getting newer hardware with the S8 Plus. If I had to pick one, it would be the G6, and like I said in the previous video, it's just due to the fact that it's cheaper. If I didn't have a budget, go with the S8 Plus every day of the week, and I'm sure that's something that you'd do as well, with a bigger screen, a better internal specification, and of course it's quite a lot newer than the G6. And that's it from me, guys. Hopefully you learned something from this video. My name's been Ryan Thomas with Failtech. I want to thank Hashtag Gamer, Darren and Ross for supporting me on Patreon, and I recommend you go follow me on social media because it can help me out and we can start a conversation over there as well. Also, please do like, dislike, comment, subscribe based on your thoughts, and like I said, tell me in the comments below. My name's been Ryan Thomas with Failtech, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.